Hello everyone, this is Family Care Center's Budgeting 101 workshop and we are now live. My name is Edward and I will be your facilitator today. I will be talking and teaching you about going through the budgeting process, about how to budget effectively. So throughout the workshop, I'll make you guys stop for maybe 10 seconds or so and just think about the questions on the slides. So the first question would be how to effectively manage the money you have. How have you, before in the past, managed your money, and has it worked for you? So going through that, just thinking about it, I hope that some of you have had a good experience with money, but the purpose of this workshop is just to make it a bit more smooth and a bit better for you. So at the end of this workshop, we expect you to be able to know and perform the 4 processes in budgeting, and also just explain what budgeting really is. Because in the end, budgeting is usually a very simple process, and you can actually tell a lot of your friends and your family about it and tell them why it's really important to you. So once again, I'm going to just ask you another question. What is money? What is it to you? Here's some other questions that you should go through and just think about on your own time. So how does it make you feel? Personally, money makes me feel very good about myself. It gives me freedom. It gives me a lot of time to be able to worry about things that actually might matter a bit more to me. So it feels really good when to have money in my wallet, right? It feels awesome to be able to say, oh, if I want to do something, I can do this. But there's the consequence later if I spend some money now that you can actually spend on now and what you can't, so that you have money in your wallet later compared to no money. Just give a moment to think about how you felt when there was money and how you felt when there was no money. So budgeting is basically the process of trying to balance out that high and low, trying to make sure that when you have money isn't too far off from the feeling you have when you have no money, and when you have no money isn't too far off from the feeling when you have money. Also, if anyone has any questions during this presentation, please ask. I'm seeing a couple of people in the chat typing. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll try to answer it throughout the presentation. So, money, how do you control it? Budgeting as a concept is actually very simple. It doesn't take a lot of brain power or intelligence to figure out how to do it. What it is it's just willpower, and it's a skill that you have to practice and practice and practice. It's a lot like exercising. If you don't go at it and try to make it a routine, you're eventually going to fall out of it. And it's going to take a lot of effort at first, but once you start doing it, you're going to start seeing the benefits right away. You're going to start seeing, oh, I'm spending too much money on this. Oh, I'm spending too much money on this. Oh, I can actually save up and I can get this now. And I just want to stress out again that the actual concepts that you learn from this will be great, but you still need to understand that you have to work at it to have a proper budgeting experience and have a proper budget. So moving on, I want to have some of you think about, do you see yourself in a future without any financial worries? And what does that future look like to you? And now I want you guys to realize that's why we're actually here today. That's why we want you guys to budget. Because in the short term, anything you spend now will actually have an impact on your future. And that's why budgets are such hard work, because you're basically sacrificing something in the present to help you achieve something in the future. And that future that you wanted, that future you were dreaming about, we're not saying that budgeting alone can get you there. You obviously have to have work, you have to have another sort of like income and things like that. But sorry, excuse me. There's a chat. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. There was a little bit of technical issue. But basically, It's better now. It's better now. Thing. But basically, budgets are they are hard work, but they'll help you achieve that goal and that future a lot easier compared to if you just didn't do it. It's something that makes something a little bit more efficient, right? So now I'll start talking about how to actually build the budget, and it's just a very simple 4-step process that is very easy to do. The simple idea behind it is you're going to have an income, and then you're going to have an expense, and you're going to try to figure out the difference between the two, right? If you want to make sure that you're not spending more than you're earning, you need to make a budget. You have to make sure that the money you're taking in is actually more than the money you're spending and pushing out of your wallet. So the 4-step process is very simple. It's right here. It's very simple. The first step is just to list the sources of all your income. Then you just list your expenses, you figure out the difference, and then you have to track it, trim it, and target. All I want to focus on this is the 4th step here. It's very important to track, to trim, and to target what you're actually doing. Because the first 3 steps, they can be very automated. They can be, oh, I'm making money now, I can put it on the budget. Oh, I have to spend something, I'll just put it on the budget. And then you figure out the difference, and then you see that it's negative. And then you just go back to the same first step, second step, and third step, which is what a lot of people actually end up doing. But the 4th step is actually the most important of this, because the first 3 are just simply gathering the information, the data, to figure out how much you can spend and how much you can't spend. Yeah, Yelda in the chat has asked, are we going to give you the PowerPoint? Yes, we actually are. Just email the family care unit later, and they'll give you another copy. Okay. So once again, to tracking and trimming, you have to make sure you do that. If you don't, this process is basically going to waste your time. You have to see where you can actually spend and where you can't spend, and you have to see where you can actually save money. So just looking at the first step, it's very simple. You're going to list all the sources of income you report. If you have a piece of paper beside you, I recommend going through this, just like a little, like maybe just back of the envelope type of calculations. Just think about the income you have today. Maybe if you have a steady job, the monthly income, the yearly income. The after-tax income would be perfect because that's actually the money you get, not the money on the paycheck. And just other sources of income, maybe you get some rent, maybe you get some sort of, your family members will help you out in some ways. But just list out all the income you could get in, say, a given month, and just tally it up. Okay, I hope everyone is done with that part. Moving on, we're going to list all the expenses. So listing the expenses actually has 2 parts to it. The first part is listing the fixed expenses. So this will be things like rent. This will be things like the internet bill, if it's just a fixed internet bill, if you have, say, unlimited bandwidth. If you have the fixed part of your phone bill, say the parts without going over the minutes or the data and stuff like that. Transportation costs to go out and to see, like, to go to work or go to a job, your childcare. There's just the things that you have a fixed part in a month. So things that won't. Things just that won't change too much if you use it more or use it less, and it's just going to be this amount for the month. So just give me another moment to list that out, just to see how much you're spending on just fixed expenses alone. Give you about 10 seconds for that. So now that you're done with the fixed expenses, there's another side of expenses that you can call flexible discretionary expenses. I like to think of these as more variable expenses. Things change when you use it more. So things like this would be the variable part of maybe your cable, if you watch more channels, right? Cell phone bills, if you use your cell phone more. entertainment. I personally really like going to the movies, so that's in this. There's clothes that you might not need to buy every single month. You can even add things like maybe going on a little trip or something like that. Um, Things that you don't need to spend too much that you need to spend money on, but changes if you spend too much on it. So even food can go into this, groceries, and this list is actually very hard to come up with sometimes just because of the amount of discretionary things we have in our lives. So, like for example, I might not want to, but I might get a coffee in a day and I just completely forget about it. Just make sure that when you actually do buy something, you list it out in this flexible discretionary advice expenses chart, and you just see how much you're actually spending on discretionaries. So just another 10 seconds to do that. Okay, so moving on to the actual difference side. Before we do that though, think about for these expenses, just remember that like what you're writing down now is what you're gonna guess it is. Like it's a rough estimate of what you spend in a month, but in reality you probably are spending something different. So try to just go out and maybe test out a budgeting process for a month just to see your average for that month and see how you're doing with spending, and use that as like a benchmark for the rest of your month. Easy ask, isn't food go with both? Food can be fixed in the fact that you might have a certain amount you can allocate to spending on it because a person does need to eat, but in the end there's some things that maybe like going out to a restaurant, or if you can save on food a little bit more. So if you say like food technically can, if you eat a little bit less you do spend a little bit less. I'm not asking you to starve yourselves obviously, but if you buy food is more of a variable thing because there's a lot of sales and you can actually cut down on it a lot. For fixed expenses, I'm looking more at things that are just solid expenses for the month. So if you have this, you're guaranteed to spend on rent. You're guaranteed to spend on, say, just transportation because you have to get that. I would not put a credit card as a proxy for a discretion. Overpaying on a credit card. So if you cannot completely pay off a credit card, try not to use that much money in a month because a credit card technically isn't your income. A credit card is actually your borrowed money, right? It's borrowed money with lots of interest. So a credit card actually has, I think it's 30%, 20% interest in a year. That's very high compared to many other sources of income that you can actually get, right? Moving on though, if there's no other questions. T-Bucks. I have no idea what a T-Bucks is. But I'm going to be moving on. Oh, food plan. So if you have a certain amount of money you can spend on food each month and you're allocating that to yourself, that's kind of like a budgeting process, right? So if you're saying, oh, I can spend this much on food, then it's saying, oh, I'm going to fix this amount of food and I'm going to spend that much on it. But if you do spend a little bit more, that's actually in your discretionary income. Expense. Okay. I hope that cleared things up, y'all. I'm sorry if it's a little bit confusing. Going to have a eating out, a laundry. We're just going to list out all the expenses, the flexible expenses, and what you're spending, and what the possibilities are, and what it could be. So, say you're eating out, right? If you're spending if you're spending like $25 a month on it, $50 a month on it, what could the possibilities be? You could be spending a lot less, right? You could be spending or a lot more, but it's more. I would write the possibilities as something you want it to be, but you can also and then I would write the laundries as the bare minimum. So what would be the minimum you can spend on eating out in a month? I would say that would probably be 0. If, say, I don't want to go out to eat any month, I can just buy groceries for the month. If I do the possibilities for laundry, I can't spend nothing on laundry. So obviously it has to be more than 0, but you obviously have a preferred place to be for that. So then you would total that up and then see what you're actually spending, to see what you prefer to spend on it, and then see what you can spend on it, to see the range that you actually have for spending on your discretionary incomes. This worksheet will be sent out to all of you later, so if you can work through it. This worksheet takes a little bit more time than just the back of the envelope income and expenses calculations that you did a while ago. So I'll just be moving on really quickly so you guys can see that, the more budgeting. So step 3 is very simple. It's just what you did. It's just simple subtraction. You're going to take the income you calculated in step 1, and you're going to subtract the expenses you had in step 2, and you're just going to find the difference for it. What's really cool about this is there's actually a 3-step process. So you're going to first take your total income, and you're going to take your fixed expenses, and you subtract those. And that number that's left will be actually what you have for your variable expenses. So your what we like to call your discretionary income, things that you can actually spend money on. And then we have a number now allowed for variable expenses, and we take that number and we subtract variable expenses from that number. Then we get a surplus or a deficit depending on if we have enough income to support all our expenses or we have more expenses than our income. If everyone is okay with done this workshop, if the expenses is more, then it's a deficit. If you have more money than you spend out, it's a surplus. So if you have just a rough estimate of what you have, because a lot of the times I went to the budgeting workshops, many of the people I've talked to actually had deficits after they did all the calculations, and they didn't realize that when they were walking into the workshop. So then we just have a simple thing once again with the deficits, the surplus in the workshop. And what's really cool about this is you can see now the possibilities and the totals and the amount you can cut from your actual budget. And you should be able to have a number you can cut out so that you can at least be that you're not within the deficit. If you're in a surplus, that's actually amazing right now, because that means you can actually spend a little bit more money, or you can actually save your money. Saving your money for the future is very good because it allows for that rainy day you have, or something you might want to save up for the future, as we will talk about in the next couple of steps. So this is what I wanted to talk about the most, the tracking, the trimming, and the targeting. It's what's the most important part about the budgeting process. When you track your income and you track your spending, you have accurate data that you can actually make a budget out of. And then with that data, if it's accurate, then you can see where you're actually spending and where you can trim. For example, if I'm watching too many movies in a week or a month, I can trim down on that. I can say, oh, I can't spend money on this now, so I'll put it into more important things. If you say, oh, I'm using too much money to eat out with friends, I can put it into groceries. As a college student right now, I find myself studying a lot, so I eat out a lot, which naturally makes me spend a lot more money. So when I started budgeting, I saw that, and I saw that if I didn't do that, I can actually use my money on a lot more productive things that I would enjoy a lot more. Say I can save up for that new that new shirt I wanted, or that new basketball I wanted to have. And it's just those things that you're going to realize that there's some things that when you spend money on, you don't realize how much money you're spending on it in a month. If you think about it, if you buy a cup of coffee a day, that's actually $30 a month. In a year, that's $365, which as up to maybe a vacation to some destination you never thought you could actually go to without budgeting properly. And it's with the fourth step that you actually find out where you can actually do this, where you can use your, where you can cut so that you can meet your budget to not have a deficit, or if you're in a surplus, where you can cut so that you can actually save more for the future. So this is more dedicated for the budgeting. Yala's asking if I have a table for that. I believe that there is a table in the slides. If there is not, we have a worksheet that we'll also send to the family care unit, and they will send that with the email. Yep. Thanks, Zelda, for the questions. So what can we do if we're in trouble? So a lot, like I said before, a lot of the people, when I go into these workshops, they have a deficit when they do these calculations. And like I said before, you just basically want to look at your expenses. So most people, the only things they can actually cut will be the discretionary expenses, because the fixed expenses are usually things that you can't really live without. You can't live without, say, a house for rent. You can't live without um, utility bills. Utility bills also. But look at your expenses and try to prioritize and see what you really need. So do I really need to go out and buy food for like takeout, like go out and eat with my friends, say like 3 times that week? No, probably not. Do I really need to go and watch that movie? No, I didn't have to, right? So you have to assess what you really need and what you really want. And for some, that's really different for a lot of people. And you have to figure out what you really do need and what you really do want. To some people, having internet is a lot more important than is a necessity instead of a want. So it's more of a personalized type of thing, and your priorities are different from everyone else. There's also sales. Sales are a great way. Spending time to find great sales can actually save you a lot of money. With the internet, now you can actually just type in Google, say sales this company, sales that company, or sales for this type of thing. You actually can probably find a store around you that will sell it for a lot less of a price. A great example I can think of right now is just electronics. If you have to buy a cable from somewhere, you might buy it from, say, more time. Finding these sales can actually give you a lot of money to spend, like save you a lot of money to spend on other things that you want. Step number 4 is just to make the necessary cuts. So if you like, I like using the movie example because it works out the best. It's just, if I don't need to go out and watch a movie, I shouldn't go out and watch a movie. So if I'm running a deficit on my budget and I shouldn't be spending on things that I want instead of things I really, really need. So just make sure to make the necessary cuts. So because when you look at your expenses and you prioritize, a lot of people say, "Oh, these are my priorities," but then they don't do anything about it. They don't go out and they say, "Oh, I need to make these cuts," or "I need to actually do something about this." They just let it sit there and they keep going on with their normal habits. And like I said in the beginning of the presentation, it's all about how you stick to it. It's like exercising. You have to just make sure you stick through with it so that it's actually useful to you in the future. And finally, just be realistic. You can't starve yourself. You can't say you're not going to pay rent for the month, or you can't say that I'm not completely going to do this. Because sometimes you can say, oh, I'm not going to watch, I'm not going to go and eat out anymore with friends. But honestly, like people, you probably still want to go out maybe once or twice in a month to just hang out with some buddies. Because being realistic, you can't. It's very difficult just to stay home by yourself for a month, right? And just think about that when you're making these cuts, and just see what you can actually handle and what you can't. Because in the end, if you can't stick to your budget, it's like, once again, it's not very useful, right? So money saving tips: don't go over your cell phone limits. Everyone can read these slides, but the cell phone minutes, they cost a lot once you go over them. Try to find a plan that fits you before you can do so you don't go over them. This one, the next one actually was surprised me a lot. There's been studies that shown that if you're hungry, you actually buy a lot more at a grocery store because you don't know what you can or you can't eat. It's if they want something, sometimes you're gonna have to say no. Sadly, there it's just they kids want things sometimes, and then afterwards they just completely don't want them, and you're like, why did I buy this? Why did I buy this for you if you don't want to eat it? Um, it's also really good to call your phone and internet or cable provider and just scare them a bit. If you complain for maybe like a decent amount of time, they actually cut your rates by quite a bit. A personal example is my dad. My dad was angry with one of the phone providers once, and he ended up getting, I think it was $10 a month off my phone bill. I don't know if this is always possible, but just a personal example. Try to negotiate with your phone and cable provider. If you can't make a payment, too, like a lot of them, they really like to help you go through with it, because if they lose you as a customer, it's less money for them as well, right? So if you're having trouble paying a bill, just give them a call and ask them, hey, I'm having a little bit of trouble. Can you see if there's anything you can do for me? And then they usually help you out with it, because when you lose your phone or cable, it makes a lot of things a lot harder as well, right? The next one actually saves a lot of money, and it's something I'm trying to do now as well. Make your lunch at home and then bring it to work. Going out to eat actually costs a lot of money, and it's very small at first because it's only going out to eat might cost $9, $6. But if you think about it, when you make your lunch at home, it only costs you $3, $4. So you're actually saving 50% or 33% on your food alone, and that can add up as well. And for any of you drinking 2 coffees a day, try to cut that to 1. If you're drinking 1 coffee a day, see if you can skip out every other day. And if you're trying to save a little bit more money, it really does end up adding up. So it's a lot of people will find that it's not the big things. It's not cutting out like a big fixed income that's going to save you a lot of money. It's going to be cutting out that little bit of a discretionary income, and you're going to see it add up over the months. And then in a year, you're going to wonder, oh wow, I have a lot more money this year than I had last year. And these are just words to live by. Always try to approach life with a plan. If you fail to plan, it's very difficult to see where you're going. And those who fail to plan do plan to fail. If you think about it, if you don't know where you're going, it's very difficult to see, to when you get to a place, to see if you actually made it to a place. So try to think about that for a bit. So we're going to talk about a bit more about goals right now. So say if you could save 10% recurrent income, just 10%. What would you like to do with your money? And what do you see with that money? So I hope everyone had a goal in mind when they thought of the 10% of the income they can save. Sorry. But now we're going to talk about some SMART goals. What does it mean to have a SMART goal? It means to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And that could be a mouthful at first. So just think about that slowly for a bit. And okay, I am low on time, so I'm going to rush through a bit of these last couple of slides. But just a SMART goal is just something that's specific, measurable, achievable. It's just something that you can actually do. So for a short-term plan, say we want to buy a freezer. It's going to cost us $300 a month. It's going to take a year. We want to buy in a year, and it's going to take us $25 in a month, right? So we're going to have these are short-term goals. You can list them out, and you can see how much you need to save per month to get these. Then we're going to have some intermediate goals. Say you want to go to college. If there's going to be a tuition, it's going to cost you $4,000, a bit on the low end, we'll be honest. But in 2 years, you want to go to college and you're saving up, and that's your monthly. And then you want to buy a house in maybe 5 years down the road, and it's going to cost you $25,000 for a down payment. So that's another $400 a month. And you're going to realize that these goals you want actually costs a lot of money per month. So you're gonna have to save $600 just to make sure that you get all three of these goals. And it sounds very simple at first, but when you add them up, it costs a lot. And that's when you're gonna realize this is what's gonna take up a lot of your monthly budgeting income from your expenses and that discretionaries. Because these goals should be part of your expenses so that you know that these are the things you want. And you're gonna see the money add up in your bank account, and you're gonna realize this monthly income, like I have to save if I want to get the things I want. So if you look at this, it's $600 a month. That's a lot of money that a lot of people usually wouldn't save if they wouldn't make a budget. So yeah, and pay yourself each week. So think about it like this. If there's something called the magic of compounding interest. So if say you had a 3% interest rate, which is truthfully a bit high right now, but say you save $20 each week. If you save $20 each week, you can actually make $12,000 in the future, in 10 years. $12,000 with $20 every week. And it does add up, right? Like $5 each week, $3,000. And you're gonna see it add up a lot quicker the more you spend because of interest. Yelda asks again, what if a person is not able to reach 1 month goal? Do they have to pay double the next month time? See, the problem with paying double the next time is if you couldn't pay it this time, it's very difficult to pay for it the next month as well, right? If you have a legitimate reason, that's sure. But if you can't pay for it for a 1 month goal, you have to think about it and try to be a little bit more realistic in your goals and see if you can actually make that. Maybe try to take it on for a longer period of time, say instead of 5 years, 10 years down the road, right? Just try to make it a bit more so that it'll fit your budgeting instead of saying, oh, I'm going to pay double the next time. Because what you're going to end up seeing is instead of paying double the next time, you're just not going to pay it again because you're going to think to yourself, oh, I can't pay it. I'm not going to get it in 10 years. So I might as well just not do it anymore. And then you end up losing a goal that you really wanted to have in the first place. So I hope everyone liked the presentation. Right now, I hope everyone can do the 4 budgeting steps. Income, list out your incomes, list out your expenses, find the differences, and just track, trim, and just make sure you do the last part, right? And set SMART goals. Christian asks, if you have credit card debt and so to pay it off, would you like to pay all your money? Is it better to pay that off first and do saving and then put less into credit card payments? Credit cards are notorious for having a lot of interest. So what ends up happening, you're going to see is a normal interest savings account will only have 2% annual interest. A credit card has 20 or more, or 30 in some cases. If you have credit card debt, I really recommend paying that off right away because 20% interest compounds enormously. If you think about it, in the first year, that if it's $100, then it's $20 in interest. Then the next year, it's actually $100.20 times 20%. So that's around, I think, it's $24, and you have to pay interest on that as well. So it really does add up if you think about it. So if you have a credit card, I'd really, like with debt on it, I really recommend paying that off first. And you're gonna see yourself saving a lot of money in a year as well. And yeah, so if anyone has any more questions, I think I'm a bit over on time right now, but I hope everyone has found that to be helpful. So yeah, I'll wait. I hope I can wait a minute for questions. And no problem, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for participating, everyone. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you. If there are no questions, I think they're gonna kick me out now. But yes, oh, Krishna, okay, there are tons of apps for tracking expenses. If you do a quick Google search, I think they'll help you find the best one. I like using, I think Mint is really cool, but there's a ton of like app tracking expenses, and it's more of a personalized thing, like whichever one you like a bit more. Which one you just find a tracking app that helps you remember, like you actually use it, because I think that's what's most important about budgeting. Is you actually stick with it, because it's a very simple concept to grasp. It's a very hard thing to do. It's very similar to exercising. Very simple to see the benefits, very hard to actually go at it, because it does take time, and it does take a bit of effort to actually start it. But once you do, it's very good. Okay. Um, no problem. And I think we're done. All right. Thank you, everyone.